Bom dia, Lisboa. I am Greg Peters, the Chief Product Officer at Netflix, and I am so delighted to be with you here today. Growing up, I absolutely loved movies. I lived at one point in my life in the middle of America in a smaller town in Kansas. And that town had one art theater. And I remember every week I would read the newspaper to see what films were coming to that theater. And I watched the majority of films that actually came through there. And I loved the very different perspectives that I saw in these films that mostly came from outside of the United States. And that theater and those films were a window for me onto the whole world. And then in 1997, I actually found a bigger window. There was this crazy company that would ship me DVDs by mail. And they had so many more movies available than I could have ever seen in that art theater. So I signed up. I was one of the early members, and that company was, of course, Netflix. 10 years later, I actually had the opportunity to join Netflix as one of the earliest employees doing the streaming product. There were just 8 of us at that point in time, but we had this dream of taking the next step of connecting people to great stories from around the world. Now, back then, we were only streaming to the PC, and all the content we had, which was frankly fairly limited, was licensed titles. And we were still only available in the United States. It was sort of a humble, small beginning. But a couple years later, we launched internationally, going first to Canada and then to Latin America, reaching Europe for the first time in 2012 when we launched in the UK and Ireland, and then expanding from there. And then just less than 6 years ago, we launched our first original streaming show, House of Cards. And then less than 3 years ago, we actually went fully global, launching in one day 130 countries, bringing the number of countries that we served to 190. Now today, as I stand here before you, Netflix sits at the intersection of entertainment and technology. With more than 137 million members that we serve around the world, and the majority of those members are outside of the United States, and that number and that ratio is growing every single day. And through that entire process, everything we've done has been guided by a singular focus of using the power of the internet to give our members choice and control over the entertainment that they love. And in pursuing that goal, we've built a global service that can give our members, wherever they are in the world, access to the same great stories delivered at the highest quality and in the most engaging way. Now, we're just at the earliest stages of what we can bring consumers. And you might be thinking, like, how can it be the earliest stages? Let me show you what I mean, and I'll use some big numbers here. Let's start with 7.5 billion. That's the number of people on the planet. Of those folks, 1.5 billion speak English in some capacity. And of those, 360 million roughly speak English as a native language or a first language. Now that is just 5% of the world's population, 5%. And yet, a large majority of international content is produced in one place, in Hollywood, in the English language. Now, Hollywood has a number of amazing storytellers, but that is an incredible disconnect. And in that disconnect lies an opportunity. And it's the opportunity that great stories should be able to come from anywhere. So after we started making our own stories about 6 years ago, we kept and had some success. We found some stories that were working for us. We kept asking ourselves, what about stories from outside of the United States? So we decided to take a bet. We commissioned our first international original series in 2014. And the goal here was really just to delight local audiences with fresh storytelling in their own language. And we saw some success there. We met that goal. Our first two international originals in Mexico and France, they were well loved there. But then, in November 2016, something unexpected and really interesting happened. We launched a dystopian thriller from Brazil called 3%. This show was massive in Brazil. It was a huge, huge hit. But much more interestingly, it was also a big hit internationally. More than 50% of the viewing hours of that show came from our members in countries as different as Australia, as France, Italy, Korea, Turkey, and on and on. We were pretty sure that this was the first Brazilian TV show ever to get that amount of viewing outside of Brazil. So encouraged, we continue to invest producing shows all over the world. In 2017, here in Europe, we launched 3 new titles. Las Chicas del Cable, which was a Spanish period piece, and then we had Subura, an Italian crime drama, and then Dark, which is a time-twisting supernatural thriller from Germany. And with each of these shows, we saw the same phenomena continue. Each show connected with an amazing number of fans around the world. Let's take Dark, for example. Not only was it one of the most all-time watched shows for us in Germany, but it was loved by fans in countries like Chile and Bangladesh and Canada. And for every hour this show was watched inside Germany, it was watched 9 hours internationally. So 90% of the viewing happened outside of Germany. In the month that it launched, it was a top 10 TV show in 136 countries. Just stop for a second. Can you think of any other German TV show that had that extent and breadth of viewing outside of Germany? So then, the moment you've all been waiting for, December last year, La Casa de Papel from Spain. It's a crazy heist story, amazing twists and turns. It originally premiered on Antena 3 in Spain, but when we launched it globally, Casa de Papel became the most watched non-English language series on Netflix ever. And you can see the global popularity in the Instagram accounts of the actors, the stars of this show. Take Alvaro Morte, for example. His followers have seen an almost 8,000% increase since the show launched on Netflix. That is crazy. And the data points keep coming. Most recently, we had our Danish series, The Rain, and then our latest Spanish series, Elite. Both are neck and neck for the most watched non-English season 1s on Netflix. We're waiting to see if one of them or both of them can actually take over Casa de Papel when they launch their seasons 2. So what is going on here? How can all of these local shows become so popular around the globe? What's happening? Well, we believe that people, members around the world, want authentic storytelling. They want a perspective from a passionate creator that's grounded in the local reality, the local culture, and that locality illuminates and reveals the universal themes of the stories. So it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what languages you speak. This is the stuff of great storytelling. And it's always been the stuff of great storytelling. But now we can use the power of the internet and a global service like Netflix to find audiences for all of these shows in every country around the world, regardless of where that story originally comes from. So how do we do this? We do it by constantly innovating and providing a high-quality, consistent member experience, whether you're firing up your smart TV or you're browsing through your cable set-top box guide or you're watching downloaded series on your mobile device on the go. To make that happen, we currently support more than 1,700 different kinds of devices. And that near ubiquity means that in the last month, our members used over 518 million unique devices globally to enjoy content on Netflix. Now, we do a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to make sure that all those members across all those devices have access to and discover the most relevant, most satisfying titles that we can offer them. But we also want to enable creators wherever they live to bring their creative vision to life at the highest production quality with the biggest palette of tools to tell their story, and then translate that quality seamlessly to every screen that we support. To make that happen, we build a whole suite of creative technology tools so that our storytellers can record in 4K, they can record in high dynamic range, HDR, they can use Dolby Atmos for amazing sound. We want to give our storytellers the capability of telling their stories in the most engaging way and to do their best work. But all this beautiful video, it doesn't matter if people can't understand what they are watching. And to that end, wherever you are, we want to speak your language. We have to make the experience feel natural to you. And this is why we work to provide our service and our content in a growing number of languages every year. When we first launched House of Cards in 2013, we had it subtitled in just 9 languages. Today, we subtitle in up to 26 languages. And back then, we only had English audio. Today, we dub in 10 languages. And that's 10 languages for adult content. For kids' content, we actually dub in 26 languages because kids don't tend to read subtitles. And as we continue to add support for more and more languages, we are working to improve the quality of the translations to preserve the original intent of the creator through that localization process. And the opportunity here is tremendously exciting. Now, subtitles may seem straightforward, you just translate it, but they're really an art form of their own. It's not just about strict translation and the intricacies. You have to think about how many characters can you fit on the screen and how fast can people read. There's a lot that goes into making that a great experience. And then dubbing is a whole other art form. It involves a great script, obviously, that's translated well, but it's actually translated to be adapted to the actual lip movement of the actors on the screen. And the casting of the voice actors is critical. If you can't relate the voice to the visual, it's very distracting and it creates an inauthentic experience. And then lip sync dubbing is a totally different form of acting. It's just not reading translated lines. So imagine you're an actor, you come in, you preview a scene 2 or 3 times, and then you have to perfectly match the emotion and the power and the performance of the original actor. It's super hard, but when you do it well, it makes a great experience. And when you introduce a great experience and you have that around amazing stories, you can get some pretty unexpected results. Let's take Europe here. People in Europe are used to watching subtitled or dubbed content, maybe from the United States or the UK. But what about content from other European neighbors, like Italians watching German shows or Swedes watching Spanish shows? Well, it turns out that 90% of new primetime shows originating in the EU over the past 3 years have been released in 2 or less European countries. So very limited. At Netflix, we see a different story. 7 of our dubbing languages and 15 of our subtitle languages are European. And we make our original titles, of course, available everywhere. And this explodes the potential viewership of European shows across the whole continent and across the world. And we've seen it again with Dark and Elite, Casa de Papel, and on and on. But what about European stories for US audiences? Well, there's a huge hurdle here. When you go out and we survey people in the United States versus people in Europe, a very high percentage of US viewers say they never want to watch a film or TV series that's not in their native language. It's a super depressing survey result. So we ignored that survey and we went ahead because we had an instinct that in reality, it could be quite different if we just did it well and did it in a way that those consumers were not used to. And we found that when we presented US members with international titles, with great subtitles and great dubbing, we saw way higher viewing than would have been indicated by that survey. And actually, most of our US members, about 85% given the show, watch in dubs. And they're more likely to finish international shows when they're watching in dubs. This revealed to us just a tremendous opportunity to introduce US audiences to the best stories from around the world if we could just present them in a high quality way with great English dubs. So we work hard to make these English dubs as authentic as possible, and we're constantly experimenting around ways to do that better. One recent experiment is we had the original cast of The Rain do their own English language dubbing. Rain was a big hit around the world. It was also a hit in the United States, and I think one of the reasons is because it's a more authentic feel when you hear those actors actually speaking in English. And we are obsessed with all of these details. We have buildings full of ridiculously dedicated people who think about every component of that experience, whether it's video quality or sound or internet, how quickly the video starts, and on and on and on. And when we do it well, when we handle all of those details well, all of that complexity fades into the background. And all you're left with is an incredible story told well and presented beautifully. We have come a long way, but there is so much more that we want to do. There are so many untold stories that the world is just waiting to see. And this isn't just great news for Netflix subscribers. The more that creators and creative communities can find new audiences, can tell their stories in a compelling and engaging way, the more we can open up the world to hearing new tales from diverse perspectives. Through Netflix and frankly all the other great entertainment choices that people have today, there's never been a better time to be a creator or a consumer of great movies and television shows. In just the next few weeks, we have new original series from Poland, from Italy, from Germany, from France, Turkey, all launching on Netflix around the world. Please check them out. I'm actually going to give you a sneak preview of 2 of them in a moment. But before that, I am thrilled to announce to you today 2 more new exciting projects from Europe. The first, we continue our investment in Spanish language content with a new young adult supernatural drama called Alma. Alma is the story of a young girl who survives a crazy crash that kills most of her classmates and leaves her with no memory. And she's got to sort of unravel this mystery before her identity vanishes forever. This comes from an incredible production team led by Belén Atienza and Sandra Hermida. They've done some of the biggest shows in Spain, like A Monster Calls and The Impossible. It's written by Sergio Sanchez. We're very excited about this story. I'm also excited to announce to you our next Norwegian original, Ragnarok. This is written by Adam Price, who's the creator of Borgen, which you may be familiar with. This is a coming-of-age drama that is rooted in Norse mythology, but it's set in modern-day Norway. And the idea is that an old Norse god gets reincarnated in a 17-year-old boy who frankly wants none of this and just wants to be an ordinary teenager. So this is another show that we're very, very excited about. Both these titles will start production next year. They'll be Netflix originals, obviously, available to all of our subscribers in 190 countries when they launch in 2020. So ultimately, all of this activity just demonstrates one thing, that great stories can come from anywhere, and they can travel everywhere. as long as we use technology to get the right story in front of the right person and make that a great experience.